Hey guys, tonight we're drifting somewhere warmer than your electric blanket and somehow even more dramatic than your family group chat, ancient Greece. But not the heroic marble statue, perfectly oiled demigod version. No, we're visiting the real Greek myths, the ones full of petty gods, chaotic heroes, and monsters who genuinely need therapy. Before we get started, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy this kind of ridiculous bedtime archaeology. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is. People keep telling me it's midnight, but they sound suspiciously awake for someone trying to fall asleep. Anyway, dim the lights. Turn on a fan for that perfect ancient breeze through a temple at 2 a.m. Vibe. Pull the blankets up like you're a Spartan covering yourself from the judgment of your ancestors. Now, think about this for a moment. Have you ever wondered what it actually felt like to be part of a Greek myth? Did heroes ever just have a bad hair day? Was Medusa brushing her snakes like we brush our pets? Did Hermes ever lose a sandal and blame it on divine miscommunication? What was grocery shopping like when half the olives were cursed? Did villagers casually complain about Zeus's latest thunderbolt incident the same way we complain about parking tickets? And how, genuinely, did anyone get anything done when half the population was being turned into trees? Congratulations. You've just woken up somewhere around, let's call it 900 BCE, give or take a divine intervention. You're lying on a warm stone floor in an olive grove. A goat is staring at you like it knows something you don't. And the myths, they're about to happen to you. You open your eyes to sunlight streaming through olive branches, only to discover that your morning routine now includes dodging divine surveillance. Every rustle of the trees feels like Zeus judging your posture. There's no privacy in ancient Greece. Every sneeze could be interpreted as a prophecy, and every yawn could accidentally summon a minor wind god. You sit up slowly, trying to pretend you're not being watched, which is impossible because in this period absolutely everything is a sign. A bird chirps once, good omen. It chirps twice, slightly worrying. It chirps 3 times, and you're pretty sure someone is about to be turned into a shrub. The goats still staring at you from across the grove doesn't help, giving you that look people today reserve for catching someone microwaving fish at work. You're not sure whether the goat is mortal, immortal, or simply rude, so you avoid making eye contact, just in case animals really are divine messengers and you've just offended a half-brother of Pan. Let's talk about mornings here. In your world, the day begins with coffee, scrolling, and the quiet hope that no one bothers you before 10 a.m. But in ancient Greece, the day begins with squinting at clouds to see whether Zeus is in a good mood. It's like living in a neighborhood where the landlord is also the sky, and he throws thunderbolts instead of passive-aggressive emails. You stand up and stretch, trying not to look too mortal. The last thing you want is to seem interesting, because interesting mortals become stories, and stories usually end with being turned into constellations. As you walk toward the village, every plant and pebble suddenly feels symbolic. A breeze brushes your arm. Did that mean anything? Is that just weather? Or is Hermes trying to get your attention because you're wearing mismatched sandals? You can't tell. No one here can. That's the problem. Ancient Greeks didn't just believe in signs, they saw them everywhere. Today, if a bird poops on your car, you say, "Great." Here, that's an omen about your entire destiny. you arrive at a small stone basin filled with cool water, hoping to wash your face. But even that moment requires caution. Water is Poseidon's domain, so technically you're borrowing his property. You cup handfuls of water carefully, muttering a nervous apology to the sea god, because the last thing you want is for your morning skincare routine to trigger a minor earthquake. The villagers glance at you with a mix of pity and amusement. To them, your anxiety is adorable, like watching someone who's never used a French press try to make coffee for the first time. Then comes the sound of whispering. You turn your head and notice two elderly women across the path squinting at you. They're not judging your clothes or your hair. They're trying to figure out which god sent you, because nobody just appears in a grove at dawn without divine involvement. You overhear one of them suggest you're a gift from Athena. The other argues you're obviously cursed by Hera. You're caught between gratitude and concern, because both women sound equally confident and equally wrong. And yet, as absurd as it all feels, the world hums with a kind of magic you can't deny. The air tastes warm, the earth feels alive beneath your feet, and for a moment you sense why people here are constantly offering sacrifices. With gods this involved in daily life, gratitude is just another survival skill, like keeping receipts or locking your phone. Your morning ends with one final sign. A single olive drops from a branch and bounces off your forehead. The villagers gasp. You freeze. They interpret it as a blessing. You interpret it as a concussion from a divine snack. Either way, your day has officially begun. You wander into a small village where people are arguing over whether your breakfast figs belong to a local farmer or to Apollo himself. The food smells amazing. Warm bread, olives, honey. But you're terrified of touching anything in case it starts glowing, singing, or cursing your descendants for 7 generations. A woman carrying a basket of grapes passes by, muttering to herself about how Apollo has better things to do than claim produce from her backyard, while the farmer insists that gods absolutely love stealing snacks. You stand there frozen, clutching the figs like they're a live grenade made of fruit. The villagers argue passionately, waving their hands, making dramatic points, sounding for all the world like the ancient Greek version of people fighting online about whether pineapple belongs on pizza. Your stomach growls loudly, loud enough that several people turn to look at you as if your digestive tract has just delivered an omen. One man squints at you thoughtfully before declaring that hunger is clearly a sign sent by Demeter. Someone else counters that it's probably Hermes, because he's always causing mischief. Meanwhile, all you want is breakfast that doesn't require a theology degree. Let's talk about eating here. In your world, breakfast is simple. Toast, cereal, maybe a quiet existential crisis over email. But in ancient Greece, breakfast is a diplomatic negotiation. Every ingredient has a story. That bread, made from grain blessed by Demeter. Those olives, sacred to Athena. That honey might actually belong to a nymph. Even the plate you're using is decorated with a scene of gods arguing, which feels uncomfortably on the nose. You finally sit at a low wooden table, trying to determine which foods are safe to touch without spontaneously igniting a myth. The villagers join you, placing dishes around you with great ceremony, as though presenting offerings to a very confused minor deity. One woman places a bowl of yogurt in front of you, tells you it's in honor of Hera, and then whispers, "Don't actually say her name out loud unless you want trouble." You reach cautiously for a piece of bread, only for an old man to stop you mid-air. He leans in and asks if you've made a proper offering yet. You blink, unsure whether he means a real sacrifice or just the ancient Greek version of saying grace. He clarifies by pointing to a tiny clay altar with traces of olive oil. Apparently, before eating, you're supposed to pour a drop of food onto the altar as a sign of respect. It's like the ancient precursor to leaving a Yelp review, except this one is for gods who can smite you. After drizzling a bit of honey onto the altar, praying it doesn't summon a swarm of bees, you finally take a bite. The bread is soft and warm, the olives rich and salty, the figs perfectly sweet. For a moment, the chaos fades. You taste the earth, the sun, the quiet dedication of farmers who hope the gods stay, distracted for at least one growing season. Then a chicken, completely unbothered, hops onto the table. It stares at your food with the confidence of a creature that has never feared consequences. The villagers gasp. "A sign!" someone shouts. You freeze again, mid-chew, wondering if this breakfast will end with you being worshipped, judged, or lightly cursed. But as the absurdity swirls around you, myths, rituals, sacred snacks, you realize something. In a world where anything can become a legend, even breakfast is an adventure. And somehow, against all odds, it tastes incredible. You try to help a potter shape clay, but every 5 minutes, some heroic demigod sprints past on a quest, knocking over amphorae and shouting about destiny. It's impossible to concentrate when the local economy keeps getting disrupted by prophecy-related property damage. The potter, a patient man who has clearly lived through generations of heroic nonsense, sighs each time someone barrels through his workshop, yelling about sacred bulls or divine vengeance. You watch him reshape the clay with the calm resignation of someone who knows that the gods will never compensate him for any of this. It's remarkable. He smooths the surface of a vase like he's erasing trauma. Meanwhile, you're pretty sure you've inhaled enough dust to classify yourself as part terracotta. Let's talk about work in ancient Greece. In your world, you deal with emails, deadlines, and co-workers who microwave fish. Here, you deal with heroes who genuinely think their dramatic monologues are more important than your pottery lesson. A young demigod sprints past again, this time wearing a lion pelt and yelling something about eternal glory. He bumps the table, sending a half-finished amphora wobbling. The potter catches it with reflexes honed by trauma. He mutters, "Hercules came through last week. We're still finding pieces." You try again to shape the clay, your hands sinking into the cool, earthy texture. For a moment, it's peaceful. Then a woman bursts through the doorway, shouting about a new prophecy. She apologizes while simultaneously sweeping her hand across 3 shelves of cups she doesn't see. The potter groans as they shatter. You quietly wonder if prophecies always require this much destruction, or if it's just cultural enthusiasm. The potter gives you a gentle instruction. Move your hands like the river moves. It's beautiful advice, but you barely have time to apply it before a man in bronze armor storms in, complaining that a local oracle told him he would find answers in clay. Without warning, he grabs a lump of your work, holds it to his ear like a seashell, nods dramatically, and sprints out again. You blink, unsure if that counted as theft or spiritual consultation. Outside, the noise never stops. Horses clatter across the streets, messengers shout, lyres twang, and somewhere nearby someone is absolutely failing to slay something. potter, still reshaping more clay, shrugs and says, "Heroes only appear when you least need them, like relatives visiting." A sudden crash echoes through the courtyard. A demigod trips over a basket of figs, rolls across the workshop floor, stands up, salutes you both, and continues running without explanation. You look at the potter. He doesn't react. This, apparently, is normal. When you return to your wheel, your clay has dried slightly. A cruel joke in a place where time keeps getting interrupted by people with mystical birthrights. You wet your hands again and try to coax the clay back into something resembling a vessel instead of a collapsed muffin. You begin to think this might take days, or weeks, or until the gods lose interest. As the afternoon light softens, the chaos finally settles. No more shouting, no more armor clanging. For the first time, you hear only the soft spinning of the wheel. The potter smiles at your progress. Not good, but not disastrous. Then, just as you feel proud, another hero appears in the doorway, panting, sweaty, sword drawn. He takes one look at your vase and announces, "This shape, it speaks of destiny." And with a single heroic gesture, he knocks it over, without breaking eye contact. Work, you realize, is not just difficult here. It's a full contact sport. The village priest welcomes you with a gentle smile and absolutely zero instructions. Should you bow? Kneel? Make goat noises? Everyone seems to have their own interpretation of the rituals, and you're just trying not to anger any god known for irreversible transformations. The temple itself is stunning. Pillars wrapped in ivy, incense drifting through the air, and the faint sound of someone sweeping sand in a way that suggests they've been doing it for decades without knowing why. The priest gestures calmly toward an altar, which does not clarify anything. Is this an invitation? A warning? A test? You try to study his expression, but it has the serene blankness of someone who long ago decided to stop asking questions and just roll with divine chaos. Let's talk about temples in ancient Greece. In your world, you enter a building, look for signs, maybe follow a line of people holding pamphlets. Here, there are no signs, just vibes. Strong, sacred, intimidating vibes. The villagers around you all seem confident, performing gestures that range from raising both arms dramatically to gently patting the altar like they're burping a baby. You try copying one of them, but immediately a different villager gasps and insists that gesture is specifically for Artemis on Thursdays. It is not Thursday. You shuffle back, trying to pick a ritual that looks least likely to offend anyone immortal. The priest hands you a small dish of olive oil and nods. You assume you're meant to pour it onto the flame in front of you. A reasonable guess. But before you can commit, another villager hisses, "No, that's for Zeus only." Someone else pipes up, "Actually, that's for Athena." A third person says, "Pretty sure that's for my cousin's back pain." At this point, the temple feels less like a holy site and more like a group project where no one read the assignment. You decide to wait for someone else to go first. A young woman steps up, sprinkles barley on the altar, claps twice, bows halfway, and then sneezes. The entire room goes silent. The priest leans forward, as if deciphering the sneeze's divine meaning. Finally, he nods and declares, "An auspicious sign." The woman shrugs, as if this is just her daily commute. The priest returns to you and gestures again, still offering zero guidance. You pick the simplest option, place the olive oil gently beside the altar, and step back like you're diffusing an explosive. The priest smiles warmly, which either means you've done well or you've just started a chain of events that will be immortalized in myth. You decide not to think about it. Inside the temple's inner chamber, offerings line the shelves. Fruit, woven cloth, tiny sculptures, and something that looks suspiciously like someone's lunch. Everyone contributes what they can, and the result is both beautiful and baffling. A collage of human hope aimed at beings who may or may not be listening. As you wander deeper, you spot a carved statue of the deity the temple is dedicated to. The statue's expression is somewhere between serene wisdom and mild annoyance, like it's judging the inconsistencies in everyone's rituals. You whisper a quiet apology anyway, just in case statues can hear. When it's time to leave, the priest presses a twig of laurel into your hand. You're not sure if it's a blessing, a ticket, or a receipt for your offerings. But no one seems worried, so you tuck it behind your ear and follow the villagers out into the sunlight. And as you step away from the temple, you realize something. No one fully understands the rules here. Not the villagers, not you, and possibly not even the priest. But somehow, the gods still get their offerings, the rituals continue, and life moves on. Which, given the alternatives, feels like the safest possible outcome. You head down a winding path, hoping for quiet, only to meet animals that stare at you too intelligently. A tortoise gives you a side-eye that suggests it has witnessed at least 3 mythological catastrophes and is not impressed by your presence. The grove is peaceful in the way that only places filled with unpredictable magic can be. Olive branches sway gently overhead, sunlight breaking through in dappled patches that make the path glow like it's been lightly enchanted, or at least curated by a deity with excellent aesthetic taste. The air is warm and fragrant, carrying hints of crushed olives, dusty earth, and the quiet judgment of whatever creatures are currently watching you from the shadows. Let's talk about nature in ancient Greece. In your world, wildlife mostly ignores you unless you're holding snacks. Here, every creature feels like it has a backstory, a prophecy, or a part-time job assisting a god. As you walk, a rabbit darts across the path, stops, looks directly into your soul, and then hops away with the vibe of someone who knows exactly how your life ends. You keep moving, pretending that's completely normal. A few steps later, you encounter a particularly arrogant-looking rooster perched on a low branch. Yes, perched. It tilts its head as if assessing your moral character. "Don't mind him," a voice calls from somewhere behind the trees. "He used to be a man." You spin around, but no one is there. The rooster crows ominously, which does nothing for your nerves. You continue down the path, listening to the rhythmic crunch of your sandals on gravel. It's soothing for about 10 seconds, and then the bushes rustle dramatically. For a moment, you brace yourself for a monster. Instead, a goat emerges, chewing calmly, staring so hard it feels illegal. You raise a hand in greeting. The goat nods, and wanders off like a disinterested co-worker on lunch break. You're not sure whether to feel honored or deeply uncomfortable. Further along, you spot a pair of deer standing in a clearing. They're beautiful, poised, glowing slightly in the sun. One of them blinks slowly at you with the exact expression of someone silently judging your outfit. You consider walking closer, but then remember that Artemis takes deer very seriously, and you have no desire to end up transformed into a tree for startling sacred wildlife. As you move deeper into the grove, the atmosphere shifts. The trees grow taller, thicker, more tangled. The light becomes softer, almost golden. This part feels older, ancient in a way that goes beyond time. You notice small carvings in the bark, spirals, symbols, maybe offerings left by travelers who made it this far. The animals here don't stare, they observe. There's a difference. It's the same energy as walking into a very old library where the books feel alive. Then you hear it, a soft humming. Not birds, not insects, something else. You follow the sound until you find a cluster of bees, moving in a slow, swirling pattern as if performing an organized dance routine. A nearby villager once told you bees were sacred to multiple gods, so you decide to watch quietly. One bee hovers in front of your face, too close for comfort, inspecting you like a bouncer deciding whether you're allowed into a divine nightclub. After a tense moment, it buzzes away, apparently satisfied. When you finally reach the end of the grove, you pause to take it all in. The shimmering leaves, the strange creatures, the overwhelming sense that you've just passed through a place where the line between natural and supernatural is barely a suggestion. You turn back once more, half expecting an animal to wink at you, or speak, or recite a cryptic poem about your future. But instead, the grove is perfectly still, quiet, peaceful, as if daring you to wonder whether any of it was real or just ancient Greece's idea of a casual morning walk. You meet a shepherd lounging against a rock who casually tells you that last week he watched a man get turned into a bush for insulting a nymph. He describes this with the same bored tones someone today might use to talk about traffic. You begin to understand that normal does not exist here. The shepherd adjusts his cloak, scratches the head of a sheep that looks equally traumatized, and goes on with the story as if he's recounting yesterday's weather. Happens all the time, he says, waving his hand dismissively. Some people just don't respect the forest spirits, or the trees, or anything that talks back. You open your mouth to ask a follow-up question, but he's already launching into another tale about a river god with anger issues, who occasionally floods the valley because someone dropped a pot in the water. Let's talk about shepherds in ancient Greece. In your world, shepherds are idyllic figures in textbooks, calm, pastoral, holding a stick while sheep behave like fluffy angels. Here, shepherds are frontline workers in the chaos industry. They witness more supernatural incidents before breakfast than most people experience in a lifetime. The shepherd beside you chews on a piece of grass with the resigned expression of someone who has personally seen Zeus appear, steal a cow, and leave without explanation. He points toward a grove of trees on the hillside. "See that one?" he asks. "Used to be a guy named Milos. Good fellow, bad with compliments." You recoil slightly, because now every tree feels like a potential cautionary tale. You make a mental note to be extremely polite to all plant life for the rest of your stay. Maybe even apologize to shrubs preemptively. A sheep bleats beside you, sounding weirdly judgmental. The shepherd pats its woolly head and says, "This one here, she can sense gods. Got spooked once and ran all the way to Sparta. Found her 3 weeks later living with a pottery merchant." You're not sure which part of the story is more unsettling, the god-sensing sheep or the casual tone used to describe it. The shepherd shifts, stretching his legs. "The thing about living out here," he says, "is you get used to the surprises. You stop asking why things happen and start asking how bad it's going to be. He points to a distant ridge. That's where a satyr tried to start a dance competition, still recovering. His voice drops to a whisper, as if afraid the memory itself might summon the creature. As you talk, you begin to notice how perceptive the shepherd is. He watches the sky for the slightest shift in clouds. He listens for the faintest rustle in the grass. He eyes every animal with suspicion, as if any one of them might suddenly announce a prophecy. To you, this place is overwhelming. To him, it's Tuesday. A gentle breeze drifts through, and the shepherd tilts his head thoughtfully. "Storm coming," he says. "Probably Poseidon. He's moody this month." You look up, seeing nothing but clear blue sky. The shepherd shrugs. "You'll understand eventually," he says, as if mystical weather forecasting is a skill you can develop like baking or knitting. Before you leave, the shepherd offers a final piece of advice. "If you see anything glowing, singing, or offering you wisdom," he says, "just walk the other way. Nothing good ever starts with glowing." He stands, gathers his flock, and wanders off with the calm confidence of someone who has truly seen it all and would prefer not to see any more. And you realize, as the wind shifts and the hills hum with ancient energy, that he was absolutely right. In a world where bushes might be former neighbors and sheep might predict divine storms, normal is not just gone. It never existed. You're handed a chiton made from soft linen, but no one explains how to put it on. After wrapping, re-wrapping, and nearly tripping over yourself, you realize ancient Greek clothing was designed by people who had never run for a bus. You stand there in the middle of a courtyard like a very confused gift basket, trying to figure out where your arms should go. The linen is beautiful, soft, airy, probably blessed by some minor textile god, but it has all the structure of an uncooperative bedsheet. The villagers watch you with polite amusement, whispering to each other in the tone people use when observing a stray chicken that somehow got into the school cafeteria. A woman approaches to help, which really means she wordlessly rearranges the fabric around you while making an expression that says, "How does this foreigner not know the basics?" Let's talk about clothing in ancient Greece. In your world, clothes have seams, tags, and instructions. Here, your entire outfit is a rectangle with aspirations. There are pins, bronze ones, sharp enough to perform minor surgery, and everyone uses them casually, fearlessly, like they've never once stabbed themselves getting dressed. As she fastens one near your shoulder, you hold perfectly still, convinced she's about to accidentally invent the world's first piercing. Once secured, the chiton drapes around you like you're posing for a fresco. You actually feel elegant for a moment, until you take a step. The fabric immediately tries to murder you. It wraps around your legs, tangles under your feet, and makes you wobble like a newborn deer on a waxed floor. The villagers don't even blink. Someone mutters, "First time wearing one," with the sympathy people reserve for watching someone try chopsticks for the first time. A young man demonstrates how to walk properly by taking long, confident strides that somehow avoid all entanglements. You try to mimic him and immediately get caught in your own hem. He tells you the trick is letting the gods guide your movements, which is extremely unhelpful advice when you're being slowly devoured by your outfit. Next comes the belt, which is somehow both necessary and confusing. If you tie it too high, the fabric poofs out like you're hiding a small melon under your chest. Too low, and you look like a child wearing curtains. After several attempts, you manage something that resembles a normal shape, albeit a shape that would lose a fight with a gentle breeze. As you adjust the fabric yet again, a breeze does sweep through, lifting one side of your chiton dramatically enough to reveal half your leg and a level of unasked for intimacy with the entire village. An old woman claps proudly and says, "You look just like a hero preparing for battle." You're not sure if that's true, or if she says that to everyone who accidentally flashes the neighborhood. A boy hands you sandals, thin leather straps that require their own engineering degree. You tie one, strap, then another, then lose track of which crisscross belongs where. When you finish, you've somehow tied your sandal to your own chiton. You take a step, and the entire garment puckers upward like it's trying to escape your body. A man near the olive press laughs and says, "Don't worry, even gods trip sometimes." You sincerely hope that is true. Eventually, after more adjustments than a modern fashion stylist makes in a week, you find a balance. The linen stops attacking you. The straps stop imprisoning you. You take a step without catastrophe. You're dressed. Sort of. Mostly. Good enough. And then, just when you start feeling confident, a villager calls out, "Careful. If you bend over too quickly, the whole thing opens like a curtain." You decide, for everyone's safety, to remain perfectly upright for the rest of the day. A kindly farmer invites you to eat, recounting how last year Dionysus crashed his vineyard party, and the wine refilled itself for days. The man speaks with a quiet dread, as if hoping the god never remembers the incident and comes back for round two. You sit across from him at a low wooden table, shaded by vines that look suspiciously lively, as if they remember the event too. The farmer lays out a simple but comforting spread. Bread still warm from the oven, olives glistening in oil, goat cheese so fresh, it's almost emotional. Yet he places each dish on the table with the caution of someone handling unstable magical artifacts. "Just in case he's watching," the farmer mutters, glancing upward as though expecting a theatrical entrance involving grapes and confetti. Let's talk about hospitality in ancient Greece. In your world, unexpected guests mean awkward small talk and maybe ordering extra pizza. Here, unexpected guests might be gods, and gods don't text beforehand. They just appear, drink your wine, transform your furniture into wildlife, and leave you with the emotional aftermath. As you tear off a piece of bread, the farmer tells you how Dionysus turned his wine jug into an actual miniature waterfall. "Beautiful," he says. "Ruined the rug, though." You take a careful bite of cheese, half listening and half watching the vines to see if they start dancing. The farmer sighs and pours you a cup of diluted wine. "We always mix it with water," he explains. "Pure wine is for the gods, and for bad decisions." You nod solemnly, pretending you already knew the social etiquette of divine drinking. Then he lowers his voice. "The worst part wasn't the wine," he confides. "It was the followers." He shudders slightly. "They arrived singing. They left screaming. Someone rode a goat into my house." You choke on your sip of wine, and he pats your back sympathetically. "Oh, that's nothing," he adds. "At least no one got turned into foliage this time." A moment later, his wife appears with a bowl of roasted vegetables. She sets it down gently, as if worried the bowl itself might burst into interpretive dance, and gives you a knowing smile. "Don't encourage him," she whispers. "If you let him, he'll tell the whole story again, including the bit with the satyr and the accidentally enchanted flute." But the farmer is already continuing, unprompted. Dionysus sang a song that made the donkey cry, he says. Never heard anything like it. Beautiful, but emotionally devastating. He takes a long sip of his wine, staring into the distance as if reliving the moment. His wife rolls her eyes and returns inside, possibly to make sure nothing is glowing. As you eat, the conversation drifts to safer topics. Weather, crops, the difficulty of keeping goats from climbing absolutely everything. Still, every so often, the farmer glances at the vineyard as if checking for divine silhouettes. He said he'd come back one day, he murmurs. I hope he forgets, or gets distracted, or invents a new festival far away from here. You reassure him with a nod, even though you're not sure whether gods in ancient Greece are known for being forgetful. A chicken wanders by and pecks at your sandal. The farmer watches it nervously. If it starts quoting poetry, he says, we're leaving. By the time you finish eating, the sun is higher, the vines rustle gently, and nothing has exploded, transformed, or performed a musical number. The farmer relaxes slightly. Good lunch, he says. Quiet. No gods. That's all a man can hope for. In a world where the divine might appear at any moment, a calm meal is not just lunch. It's a blessing. And you savor it with the quiet gratitude of someone who knows it could have gone very, very differently. You walk through a courtyard of marble statues, each one eerily lifelike. The sculptor claims they do not come alive at night. You remain unconvinced, especially when one seems to raise an eyebrow at your walking posture. The courtyard is silent, too silent. The kind of silence that makes you hyper-aware of your own footsteps. Your sandals thump softly against the stone, and even that feels disrespectful, like you're stomping through someone's living room. The statues stand in immaculate rows. Gods, heroes, nymphs, random mythological guys whose job descriptions have been lost to time. Each one carved so precisely you swear you can feel the faint heat of their non-existent breath. Let's talk about Greek statues. In your world, statues are decorative. Parks, museums, that one weird fountain downtown. In ancient Greece, statues are basically security cameras with the potential to turn into co-workers. Every villager has a story about a sculpture that moved just a little, or a statue whose expression changed after a particularly dramatic feast. You try not to think about these stories as you pass a massive marble warrior who looks seconds away from judging your shoe-tying technique. The sculptor follows behind you, rambling about his latest projects. This one's Achilles, he says proudly, gesturing to a towering figure that looks like it could bench press your entire future. Notice the perfect detail of the muscles. You nod politely, refusing to look too closely in case Achilles blinks. And this one is Athena. You glance at her and immediately regret it. Her eyes seem to follow you with that parental disappointment reserved for people who leave dishes in the sink. You keep walking, trying not to trip over anything. A statue of a satyr smirks at you, actually smirks, as though it knows every embarrassing thought you've had today. Another statue of a woman in flowing robes appears serene, yet something about the tilt of her head gives the impression she's silently critiquing your fashion choices. You straighten your chiton instinctively, feeling judged by marble beings who haven't moved in centuries, allegedly. The sculptor points out a young man carved in heroic pose. This one is inspired by my cousin, he says. Strong, noble, brave. You stare at the statue's flawless features and then back at the sculptor. His cousin, who you met earlier, was the man who accidentally set his own sandals on fire while trying to impress a goat. Art, it seems, runs on optimism. As you round a corner, you come face to face with a statue so realistic you freeze. It depicts a woman holding a small offering bowl, her head tilted slightly, her lips parted just enough to suggest she's about to speak. The sculptor beams proudly. "My masterpiece," he says. You stare longer than you should. Her marble eyes seem to glimmer, not move, not blink, but glimmer just enough to make you uneasy. You take a step back. The sculptor pats the statue affectionately and says, "People always say she looks alive. That's how you know I'm good at my craft." You nod while keeping a healthy distance, because if alive-looking is intentional, you suddenly don't trust this courtyard at all. A breeze sweeps in, stirring fallen leaves across the stone floor. One leaf drifts past a statue's foot, and you swear the toes twitch. You blink hard, tell yourself you imagined it, then immediately reconsider every decision that led you to this moment. Somewhere behind you, a raven caws loudly, which does nothing to soothe your nerves. As you prepare to escape, politely of course, you pass one last statue, a simple figure of a man holding a lyre. His expression is soft, almost kind. For the first time here, you feel almost comfortable. You smile. Then a villager rushes past and whispers, "Don't smile at him. People say he moves if you acknowledge him." You instantly stop smiling. By the time you reach the exit, you're not sure if the statues were judging you, mocking you, or quietly planning a midnight stroll. All you know is that you are never, ever walking through a courtyard alone again in ancient Greece, especially not near anything carved, lifelike, or suspiciously good at maintaining eye contact. The village oracle sits on a rock, muttering vague predictions that sound suspiciously like horoscope summaries. She squints at you and proclaims that you are either blessed or doomed, which is not as helpful as she seems to think. You stand there awkwardly, unsure whether to say thank you or prepare a will. The oracle scratches her head, stares at the sky for a moment, and then waves her hand as though brushing away a thought she doesn't feel like finishing. A small crowd has gathered around her, watching with the patient interest of people who understand that prophecies, like the weather, are inconsistent and frequently disappointing. Let's talk about oracles in ancient Greece. In your world, predictions come from apps that pretend to know your personality based on your birthday. Here, predictions come from tired women sitting on rocks, inhaling natural fumes and trying to decipher divine riddles before lunch. And unlike modern horoscopes, which politely avoid life or death stakes, Greek oracles specialize in vague yet terrifying pronouncements that feel like warnings about tax season. The oracle leans forward, examining you like a curious bird. "You carry great potential," she says dramatically. Then she pauses, squints harder, and adds, "Or possibly great disappointment. Hard to tell from this distance." The crowd nods respectfully, as if this is peak clarity. You resist the urge to ask whether she can narrow it down a little. A man beside you whispers, "She predicted my cousin would encounter challenges. He tripped over a tortoise that afternoon." Another villager chimes in. "Last week, she told me I'd be visited by someone unexpected. Turned out to be my mother-in-law." The oracle brightens at these stories, pleased her generalities have landed somewhere. She motions for you to come closer. You comply, partly out of respect, partly out of fear she'll curse you through eye contact if you don't. The oracle takes your hands, turns them palm upward, and makes a thoughtful sound. This is followed by a second somehow even less reassuring. She mutters something about changes on the horizon, which frankly applies to everyone, everywhere, forever. Then she grabs a bowl of shimmering water and tells you to look into it. You gaze at the surface, half expecting to see your future, half expecting to see absolutely nothing because the bowl is opaque. She peers over your shoulder and gasps dramatically. "Oh," she cries, "that could mean anything." The crowd murmurs in awe. You begin to think this oracle is just improvising with confidence. A gust of wind sweeps through, tossing the oracle's hair around her face. She takes this as a sign, spreading her arms theatrically. "The gods speak," she announces. The gods apparently sound like random breezes. She interprets this particular gust to mean you should avoid goats for a while. Considering your previous encounters with judgmental livestock, you accept this advice immediately. The oracle then launches into a poetic monologue about fate, destiny, and the unseen rivers that flow through your life. It's beautiful, confusing, and includes at least 3 metaphors you suspect she made up on the spot. At one point, she declares, "Your path is both lit and shadowed," which could mean you're about to find clarity or walk directly into a wall. Finally, she hands you a small token, a pebble with a vaguely mystical shape. "Carry this with you," she whispers. "It will protect you from something." She doesn't specify what. You decide to keep the pebble anyway. In a place where bushes used to be people, every bit of protection helps. As you step away, the oracle is already turning to the next villager, preparing to deliver another profoundly unhelpful revelation. You hear her say, "You will have choices." And the crowd gasps as if she has just recited a new epic poem. You walk off, clutching your pebble, unsure whether you've been blessed, doomed, warned, misled, or simply entertained. Either way, the oracle seems satisfied, and that apparently counts as prophecy fulfilled. As twilight settles, villagers gather around a crackling fire, sharing stories of sea monsters, skyborne horses, and neighbors who were temporarily kidnapped by gods. The line between myth and gossip is thin, and the atmosphere is warm, chaotic, and oddly comforting. You settle onto a log near the fire, the flames casting dancing shadows across faces worn by sun, wind, and generations of outrageous plot lines. The smell of wood smoke mixes with roasted barley cakes, and the night hums with anticipation. Everyone's ready to talk, or brag, or exaggerate, usually all 3 at once. A man to your left leans forward and whispers, as though sharing state secrets. "You'll hear things tonight, some true, some almost true, some we just like telling because they annoy my cousin. Let's talk about storytelling in ancient Greece. In your world, people binge shows, listen to podcasts, or argue online about which season of a series went downhill. Here, entertainment is communal, a nightly tradition where facts, fiction, and personal bias blend into masterpieces of dramatic nonsense. As one woman puts it, a good story should be 80% truth, 20% flair, and 100% entertaining. Math, it seems, is optional when you're around a fire. The first storyteller, a fisherman with dramatic eyebrows, launches into a tale about a sea monster the size of a house that once knocked over his fishing boat. His wife interrupts to clarify that the monster was actually a large tuna. He protests. The villagers boo her for ruining the suspense. He triumphantly concludes his version with, "And that, friends, is why I only fish near shallow waters now." The crowd applauds like he's performing at an amphitheater. Next comes a young girl, maybe 9 years old, who insists she saw a Pegasus in the hills last week. The adults exchange knowing smiles, the sort that say, "Ah, childhood imagination," while simultaneously leaving room for the possibility she's absolutely right. She describes the creature with impressive detail: white wings, golden mane, a diva attitude. "It sneezed sparkles," she says. Half the villagers nod as if this is biologically reasonable. Then an older man clears his throat, ready to deliver a classic: the time his neighbor was kidnapped by gods. According to him, the neighbor vanished for 3 days, returned sunburned, bewildered, and holding a lyre he definitely didn't own before. The neighbor, sitting across the fire, insists he just got lost in the hills after drinking too much wine. No one believes him. The lyre is simply too suspicious. As the flames crackle, another woman begins a story about a nymph who cursed her husband for cutting down the wrong tree. "He deserved it," she says firmly. "He was warned." The crowd murmurs their agreement, because if there's one universal truth here, it's that meddling with magical plants never ends well. You begin to notice a pattern. Every story, no matter how wild, has a moral. Don't anger the gods. Don't ignore omens. Don't chase mysterious glowing lights. Don't accept gifts from beings who appear in dramatic smoke. And most importantly, don't assume you're safe just because the last strange event happened to someone else. Chaos travels. A man hands you a cup of sweet wine, encouraging you to share a story. You panic for a moment. How do you compete with monster tuna and divine kidnappings? You mumble something about your village far away and creatures called alarm clocks. The villagers listen politely, but you can tell they're quietly rating your tale. You score points for creativity, but lose some for lack of shapeshifting. As the fire burns low and the stars emerge like distant lanterns, the stories shift to quieter, softer memories. Lost loves, brave ancestors, hopeful wishes. The kind of stories that remind you that myth-making is just humanity trying to explain the world and have fun doing it. By the time the embers glow red, you feel strangely at home. In this village, everyone's a storyteller. Truth is negotiable, and the night is a canvas for every dream, fear, and half-believed legend. And for once, you're content to embrace the chaos. You lie on your back beneath a vast sky, the constellations glowing brighter than any city lights. Each star represents a story, some tragic, some strange, some suspiciously like cautionary tales for people who didn't mind their business. And here you are, breathing it all in, halfway between awe and utter confusion. The air is cool, wrapped in the scent of wild thyme and distant campfire smoke. Crickets hum like a natural lullaby, and the world around you softens into a quiet that feels almost sacred. Above you, the stars don't just sparkle. They throb with a kind of ancient intensity, like they're trying to get your attention. And honestly, they probably are. This is ancient Greece, after all, where the sky is basically a family photo album of people who got involved in divine drama and didn't live to tell the tale. Let's talk about the night sky in ancient Greece. In your world, stars are just glowing balls of gas millions of miles away. Here, they're former heroes, misbehaving mortals, and creatures who annoyed the gods enough to get relocated permanently. You point to one particularly bright cluster, and a villager beside you casually says, "Ah, yes, That's the one about the guy who tried to steal a god's lunch. Now he lives up there. You quietly make a mental note never to touch divine food. The longer you stare, the more the constellations seem to shift into recognizable shapes. Hunters, beasts, ships, musicians, even a scowling face that strongly resembles the village goat who has judged you since sunrise. You blink. The shape is still there. Maybe mythological projection is a side effect of breathing ancient air, or maybe the goat's influence is just that powerful. As the sky deepens to a velvety blue-black, a shepherd reclines beside you, pointing out stories the way parents today point out passing planes. That one up there, he says, represents a woman who bragged about weaving better than Athena. He pauses. She shouldn't have said that. You nod, fully aware by now that humility is the only safe hobby in this civilization. Boasting is basically a one-way ticket to celestial exile. Another villager joins in, describing the tale behind a constellation shaped like a dolphin. A hero once jumped into the sea to escape a very awkward situation, she explains. The dolphins helped him. The gods rewarded their kindness. You want to ask what the awkward situation was, but the way she avoids eye contact suggests it was extremely embarrassing and, frankly, none of your business. You shift on the grass, letting the earth support you as the sky stretches infinitely above. The stars seem closer here, almost reachable, as if one good leap could land you on the edge of a myth. It's a strangely comforting thought. In this world, every person, animal, place, and weather pattern has a story. Some glorious, some cautionary, some downright ridiculous. But all of them matter as constellations. Glimmer. The villagers fall silent. The night holds its breath. For the first time all day, nothing is running, shouting, transforming, or giving vague prophecies. It's just you and the cosmos, a quiet moment suspended between earth and myth. You realize that in ancient Greece, stories aren't something people tell, they're something people live. Every star reminds you that ordinary lives can turn extraordinary at any moment, usually because a god made a questionable decision. You inhale the night air, feeling small, peaceful, and strangely connected to everything around you. The stars watch, ancient and patient, as if waiting for you to write your own story next. And for the first time all day, you don't feel confused. You feel part of the myth. As the night settles into a soft, ancient hush, you stretch out beneath the vast Greek sky, letting the calm finally reach you. You've survived a full day in a world where gods meddle like over-involved relatives. Animals judge you with startling accuracy, and heroes sprint around like caffeinated gym influencers. And somehow, you made it through without being turned into a shrub, constellation, or cautionary tale recited around a bonfire. You navigated breakfast that might have belonged to Apollo, pottery lessons continuously interrupted by demigods with no respect for personal space, and temple rituals that no one, including the priest, actually understands. You wandered through olive groves full of creatures who may or may not be magical, chatted with shepherds who have seen things that should require emotional support, and wrestled with fashion so complicated it should count as a sport. You ate lunch with a man still traumatized by Dionysus's idea of a good party, strolled past statues that absolutely looked alive, and received life advice from an oracle who clearly needs more coffee. And somehow, you ended the night surrounded by stories that blur the line between gossip and legend. So tonight, as you settle deeper into your very comfortable, extremely modern bed, one free of bugs, curses, questionable vines, and judgmental goats. Maybe whisper a small thank you to the past, to the villagers who handled divine chaos with weary grace, to the storytellers who turned fear into laughter, and to the countless ordinary people who managed to live full, meaningful lives in an unpredictable world that refused to let anything stay ordinary. Because history may be strange, unpredictable, and a little unhinged, but it's also proof of how stubborn, resilient, and wildly hopeful humans have always been. People survived storms created by gods, heroes barreling through their workplaces, and a daily risk of being accidentally mythologized. And yet they laughed, shared stories, raised families, planted crops, and found joy wherever they could. And here you are now, safe beneath your blankets, listening to their world drift gently into yours. Let the weight of today fall away. Let the noise soften. Let the myths fade into distant stars. You're warm, you're safe, and the only thing on your schedule tomorrow is waking up. So close your eyes. Sink into stillness. Let sleep come quietly, like a gentle breeze through the olive trees. Good night.